What's the difference between a Democrat and a socialist? I used to think there was a big difference. What do you think it is?
The difference between
a Democrat like Hillary Clinton and a socialist like Bernie Sanders.
What's the difference between being a Democrat and being a Republican?
Well,
Democrat National Committee Chairman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, also a Florida congressman, on Chris Matthews' Hardball last night on MSNBC, unable to answer the question, what is the difference between a Democrat and a socialist? Socialist and Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders continues to rise in the polls as Hillary Clinton stumbles. It's a perfect topic to discuss with our political panel. From Newsmax Washington, we welcome in Newsmax contributor and a columnist for National Review Online, John Fund. And also joining us from Boston, Brad Bannon, Democratic strategist and the president of Bannon Communications Research. John, let's begin with you. Does Sanders' rise in the poll suggest the Democrat Party is so far to the left it can no longer really resonate with the American people?
No, but I think the Democratic establishment is so divorced from the daily concerns of much of the Democratic base that they're in full revolt. They see a Democratic Party that, like the Republicans, has often been too close to big business and to Wall Street, that too many Democrats, like Hillary Clinton, supported the Iraq War. And when it comes to a lot of social issues, Hillary Clinton may be on the same page, but they don't trust her sincerity because she was such a Johnny-come-lately on so many issues.
Well, speaking of social issues and our current president's social policies, Brad Bannon, you're the guy here from the Democrats. Has Mr. Obama helped to move the party and the nation leftward?
Oh, absolutely. Let me give you a good example. Back before Barack Obama became president, let's say back in 2007, a majority of Americans were opposed to gay marriage. 7 years later, now a big majority of Americans are in favor of gay marriage, and that's just one example.
Do you see this party, Brad, moving increasingly to the left, or is it more of what John discussed about the Washington establishment versus a more populist position in the nation for both parties?
Oh, I think it's really, on both sides, it's a battle between establishment Washington politicians and populist politicians who are skeptical of the way the system is working and want to make it better. And I think you see that on the Democratic side with Bernie Sanders, and I think you see it on the Republican side, maybe even with someone like Donald Trump, who has a big lead in the Republican polls now.
Well, on the Democratic side, rumors continue to grow of a Joe Biden candidacy. Reports now indicate Biden's chief of staff met with a major Democratic donor. John Fund, is Hillary vulnerable? Will Biden get into this thing? And if he does that change things for Hillary?
Hillary is vulnerable, but not vulnerable enough, I think, for Joe Biden to take the plunge. I think he realizes that he has almost universal name ID, but he does not have universal respect among Democratic professionals or even the Democratic base. They view him as a nice guy, but sort of like the crazy uncle in the attic. And I think before you saw Joe Biden step in, you'd be looking at people like John Kerry, the Secretary of State. You'd be looking like people like Elizabeth Warren, maybe even Michael Bloomberg, who once was a Democrat and could become one again.
Well, that's an interesting scenario you set up, John, but let's ask a genuine Democrat, Brad Bannon. Do you see Biden getting into this thing?
I think it's just rumors. I would doubt very much that Joe Biden gets in the race. I think what Vice President Biden is trying to do is to be ready in the event that Hillary Clinton's candidacy collapses. I don't think it's going to collapse, and I don't think Joe Biden is going to run. It's fun to speculate, but I don't think it's going to happen.
It's interesting, John Fund, you mentioned the name Bloomberg a second ago, and as it turns out, reports surfacing that Jeb Bush was on the board of directors for the Bloomberg Foundation. The foundation ended up giving millions of dollars to Planned Parenthood. With the latest controversy surrounding Planned Parenthood, might that spell trouble for Jeb Bush?
I'm sure it would be another reason for some primary voters to find cause not to vote for Jeb Bush. But as a practical matter, these boards of foundations are stuffed with dozens of people. No one person can veto a contribution to a group like Planned Parenthood. I don't think that Jeb Bush supports abortion. I think if you look at his actions in the Terry Schiavo case, his credentials are pretty much in order. However, Jeb Bush is under suspicion just because of the company he keeps. And he has a lot of liberal friends, and we're also going to be hearing about the award that he gave Hillary Clinton a few years ago.
Yeah, and they appeared on the same stage today in Fort Lauderdale at the Urban League. Gentlemen, we'll have to end it there. Brad Bannon in Boston, John Fund in Washington, you have our thanks. And we want to hear from you. Which candidate has your vote? Donald Trump, Mike Huckabee, Scott Walker, or somebody else? Tell us who you want to see as the Republican nominee. Newsmaxpolls.com.